What's going on, everybody? TH back again with another video here to talk about the Denver Broncos with you in our Fix the Franchise series, the 5th installment of this series. They are, they would hold the number 5 overall pick. Of course, that belongs to the Seattle Seahawks, but we are going in draft order, so Denver is the next squad up. If you're a Broncos fan, let me hear what you think this team should be doing in the offseason down below. What free agency moves, who should they target in the NFL draft with that San Francisco pick later on in the first round. Love to hear your thoughts. Or if you're an NFL fan, have some takes about how you can fix the Denver Broncos, let me hear it down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoy. Hit the like button if you do. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. But let's jump right into it. Start talking about the Broncos coming off a 5-12 season. Obviously, very disappointing. Plenty of people who had Denver winning the AFC West, and there were people who were saying they could go on a deep playoff run. Russell Wilson and, the Nathaniel Hackett, the hiring of Hackett and the trade and signing long-term of Russell Wilson had, energy and the buzz at a high level for a lot of Broncos fans. And I kind of feel bad for George Paton, the GM. He was this guy who kind of stayed as an assistant GM for almost 2 decades, specifically in Minnesota, and just kind of waited for the right moment to come his way, and then he thought the Broncos were that. And, you go back a year's time, Hackett hiring was generally seen as a positive move, and then the trade and extension to Russell Wilson was generally perceived as a big win for Denver. So kind of feel bad for George Paton because he made 2 moves that he was applauded for that turned out to be disastrous. So a little unfortunate, but a guy that, we'll see if they bring on Sean Payton. He might want to have more control over the roster, so that may kind of take away some power from Payton, but I do hope he continues to hold that type of levity within the organization and continue to showcase why he was so highly coveted for almost 20 years. But anyways, that tangent aside, 7 draft picks all in all in this year's NFL draft. They don't have their own first-round pick, which we talked about. That belongs to the Seattle Seahawks at 5, but they do have San Francisco's, which right now is in the late 20s, and then a little more than $13 million in cap space, but that ranks 15th in the NFL. I have a couple moves here once we get into our free agency bullet points on how I think they can free up some more, but this team also has just kind of an addition by just recovering from injury. Javonte Williams, put him in the picture because, they had him last year and he looked really, really good. He immediately looked like potentially a future franchise running back and a guy who's just going to be a stud at that position for years to come. But of course, has the injury midway through the season, or really not even midway, pretty early on in the season. And, that 2/5 mark of the season, about 40% of the way through. So by him coming back, hopefully at 100% strength, he's kind of an addition that they didn't have for the entire season. Want to hit on that real quick. But now let's talk about free agency. So some moves I think they can do to free up some cap space. Graham Glasnow, it looked like he lost that starting spot anyways. So moving on from him and saving almost $11 million makes a ton of sense in my opinion. And then, with that money, the interior offensive line still needs work. So I pitched, re-signing Dalton Reisner. If you're a Broncos fan and you've gotten to see Reisner play every week, let me know what you think about bringing him back. Is he someone you want to continue to see as a starter in Denver, or is it like, no, we've seen that, it's not that great, let's move on? And if so, maybe Ben Powers. It sounds like Denver could be priced out of Ben Powers in his market. A lot of the stuff I've heard and seen on Twitter and just, listening to a lot smarter people than me, kind of talk about where Ben Powers' stock is at right now, is that he's probably the most coveted interior offensive lineman hitting the market this free agency, so he may be too expensive for Denver to go after. And in that case, maybe a Con McGovern, right? This guy who's not really beloved by the Cowboys fan base, and he's in his mid-20s, still some upside to be tapped into. Could be an upgrade there on the interior offensive line. So if you're a Broncos fan, let me know what you think about Reisner or some potential other interior offensive linemen you could bring in. But I do think Graham Glasnow, moving on from his contract, saving $11 million, it makes a ton of sense there. And then, want to talk about some other options, places where I think they can get an upgrade per se. So we start with strong safety. This isn't necessarily an upgrade, but Kareem Jackson was only on a 1-year deal. They re-signed him pretty late in free agency last year. Could do the same thing again this season. He's been pretty solid, and he's one of those corners that moves to safety. I always love seeing that. But I could also see that Jackson's in his mid-30s. They want to go younger or go in a different direction. Von Bell, 28, so upper 20s, but played really, really well for the Bengals. And I think, plugging him in with Justin Simmons, Simmons can be the free safety to let him be an over-top lurker who can also come crashing downhill. And then Von Bell mans that, box safety role, plays that strong safety spot. That's a spicy tandem. And then you have Pat Surtain and ideally Ronald Darby can continue to play pretty good football. So Darby's another guy who maybe could be a cut casualty. I know he was pretty good that first year that Denver had him. Then he missed some time this year with injury. So Darby, if he's around, could be a, kind of that rounding out of the secondary opposite of Surtain. And then if you brought in Von Bell with Simmons, man, that secondary, if they keep Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator from last year, around, That gives them a lot of tools to work with. But maybe instead of strong safety, they go linebacker route. Josie Jewell is going to be hitting the free agent market. Maybe they just bring Jewell back, but he's continued to battle injuries. So maybe Deion Jones, this guy who one time for the Falcons was one of the hottest names at the inside linebacker position because he was young, he was super athletic, and a cover 3 heavy defense. He was perfect for that. A little bit more, it would be a little bit of an adjustment to Denver, right? A lot of 2 high shells, a lot of cover 4, but still a lot of the same principles there, covering a lot of the middle of the field. Maybe Avaro, if he's there still as the DC, could kind of repair the stock of Deion Jones, and you could buy low, but then have a bunch of the upside come your way. Or Anthony Walker Jr., another former Brown inside linebacker, not nearly as athletic, but could just be a guy who's serviceable, does the job, and relatively cheap. So a couple different ways I think the Broncos can go on the budget side there. A little bit more upside in Jones, but I think potentially a little bit higher floor with Anthony Walker Jr. Of course, injuries are kind of hard to tell with both those guys. But now let's talk about the NFL draft. Obviously, picking towards the end of the first round, I think that's a perfect spot to grab a right tackle. I think Darnell Wright makes a ton of sense, the tackle from Tennessee, since switching over to play right tackle after starting his career as a left tackle. Played really good football for Volunteer, so I think that totally makes sense. This could also be a spot where this cornerback class is really deep. Maybe a Cam Smith falls in your lap, and if he does, I don't care if Ronald Darby is set to be a starter. I want to see that man in that type of Ejiro Evero cover 4 heavy defense. Him and Surtain could be an insane cornerback duo of the future. A guy who played a whole lot of off coverage at South Carolina, but I do think has the ability to go get somebody at the line of scrimmage and play some press man. So gives you a little bit of flexibility, whether if you are playing man, go get a guy, or playing cover 4, play your lane, have him play off, and just let him be kind of a ball hawk. May not be the most insane athlete, but I think he'll test okay enough to be a first-round pick. And, depending on who you talk to, he could be as high as like cornerback 2, maybe even some people cornerback 1, or maybe you're like me and he's like cornerback 4 or 5, but a damn good cornerback 4 or 5 in this draft class. So would love to see that pick, especially if the dude decide to move on from Ronald Darby, or if they keep him around as a potential replacement for Darby. I believe this is the last year of his contract that he signed a couple years back. So tackle, corner totally makes sense. I know some people have said edge, and I've seen that in some mocks. Actually, Daniel Jeremiah just did a reaction to his latest mock draft up on the channel now if you missed it. But he had B.J. Ojulari, the edge rusher from LSU. This team doesn't strike me as one that needs, edge, because I see, Randy Gregory, I see Brandon Browning, which, hey, if you want to go and do some searching on my channel, go back. Me and plenty of other people, but, I will take the win for this if I can. Said that Browning makes a ton of sense as a future edge rusher. The best snaps that he had on his tape coming out of Ohio State were rushing the passer. So it's been great to see you can kind of make that transition from inside linebacker to be an edge rusher, and we got to see some of that potential on display early on this year before his injury. But also Nick Benito, you're bringing in Jacob Martin. I believe he might be a free agent as well, so maybe he's a cheap signing. You got him from the Jets at the deadline. So I think they already have a nice rotation of edge options if they bring back Martin, and then ideally Browning and Gregory are staying healthy. Benito features in as that third rusher. I think you're okay there, but let me know if you're a Denver fan. Are you looking at edge rusher late 1? Because if so, I'll have to take that into consideration. Let's talk about the NFL draft a little bit more. Like I said, cornerback 2 I think makes a ton of sense, but interior offensive line could also be in play, especially if it's like, hey, we got priced out of Ben Powers. Connor McGovern's already gone and signed somewhere on day 1. We still need somebody to be a potential, backup interior offensive lineman, or maybe we're looking for a starter somewhere. Maybe Lloyd Cushenberry. Maybe you're looking for an upgrade there at center or something like that. Interior offensive line could certainly be in play day 2, day 3. Interior defensive line, Draymond Jones can be a free agent. Mixed returns, but still a young player. I could see them bringing him back because he's 26, 27, but I could also see them just looking for an upgrade. So IDL could certainly be in play there. Linebacker, strong safety, again, if they don't take a chance on a Von Bell, Deion Jones, Anthony Walker, some of those names I pitched earlier on. So some other positions of interest, and specifically the safety class, I think there's actually a lot of talent that could kind of be on the board still. They're late 2nd, late 3rd, and even into day 3. I think there could be some guys who linger on the board there at safety and linebacker as well. So be interested to see the stock and how those two different position groups kind of play out and how hot certain names get down the stretch. But final notes here. I mean, the head coaching hire has to be the most important thing about this offseason. It wasn't even anything we really talked about heavily. We talked about free agency, we talked about the draft, but that head coaching hire. So that's going to dictate. Can they save Russell Wilson? And I mean, if you're the Broncos ownership and if you're George Paton, having people come in, the number one thing that you're having in that conversation revolve around has got to be like, okay, how are you going to fix Russell Wilson? Like, how are you going to get him back to where he was, in Seattle? So whoever gives you the best answer, whoever you have the most confidence in, I'm not in the room, can't listen to this conversation, so I have no input there. I will make a predictions video unless we start getting some news breaking about potential head coaching hires, but I have fits that I think make sense and people I like to see in those positions, but you'll have to wait later on this week. We'll have that up on the channel, but nonetheless, that head coaching hire is the most important thing to come out of this offseason. And then upgrade a few spots on the roster, right? Like, change up a little bit of the interior offensive line, maybe find that future cornerback too, linebacker, safety, some of the things we talked about. You get those small incremental upgrades, get the head coaching hire right, you fix Russell Wilson, and this team can be right back to where they were supposed to be this past season as AFC West contenders and AFC contenders in and of itself. But let me know what you would do to save the Denver Broncos, get Russell Wilson back on track. Who should be the next head coach of the Broncos? Love to hear your opinion down below in the comment section. What should they do in free agency? Who should they be targeting in the draft? What position group should they be targeting in the draft? Love to hear your thoughts. I respond to every comment, so let's talk about the Denver Broncos down below. That's going to do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new. But until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.